welcome back to the channel. My name's Adrian, and today is a review that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and I'm terrified because it's a Mediterranean-based fantasy setting. And with that, it means it's Italian based on folklore. And it's not a language that I'm wonderful in. You know, as a dyslexic, I really struggle with words. So out of the gate, I'm just going to butcher. I've probably even butchered the title once I actually get around to it, but there's a lot of Italian type words in here, so do forgive me, Alessandro, for this. It's a really interesting world. Hopefully I can cover it in a way that isn't going to make you just go, that's not how it's pronounced, but there will be a lot of that in here, so be warned. But yeah, it's really interesting though. Spaghetti westerns, fully aware of what that is, and this is, it just talks about it straight off on Drive-Thru RPG. It's a world that, you know, it's fantasy setting, but it's very human centric. Apart from, you can play these like mannequins and all these weird little fairy type folk. But yeah, it's not the traditional fantasy, as in if you're looking for elves, dwarves, that sort of thing, that isn't it. But it's still got, well, I think there's 50 pages of monsters in here, so but it's one of those vibrant, exciting worlds with really dark undertones. So I recently did a review of Dark Forest, and that's, you know, it looks, because it's anthropomorphic animals, it looks quite nice on the outset, but once you get into it, this world feels like this as well, because once you get into the hex crawl parts, where there's a few that I'll talk about, there's some of the descriptions, it was, you know, it sort of plays out as a nice place, then you go down the rest of the hex crawl and you're like, okay, at night this becomes quite sinister. The creatures, because it's based on, well, I assume it's based on Italian folklore, some of the specific creatures there, you're going to have a lot of monsters I'd never heard of, which means they're interesting. You can throw these at players. There's so much in here, even if when I get to the end, you sort of go, actually, I still want to be playing orcs, you know, dwarves, elves, whatever it may be. I think you could really do. There's so much in here that you could just take and move on. I've kind of got onto my final thoughts before I get into it, but let me just take you through, as I do with these Drive-Thru RPG, so you can see a little bit about the book and where you can pick it up. So it's currently only available in PDF copy. It is £9.12, which, what's that? Probably $13 US, something along those lines. Comes in at 308 pages, so you're getting a lot in here for, you know, huge value for money. And when it starts talking about the description here, you know, you're tired of your usual elves and dwarfs. You know, it's a Mediterranean. The Mediterranean air carries a scent of basil, fresh pressed olives, and almond blossoms. You know, I've been to Italy. It is such a, especially if you go to more of the old country part of it, it's very beautiful, very scenic. And I love the idea of this, that, you know, having been there, you can kind of see how wonderful Italy is. And then Alessandro's just going to go, actually, let's just make it a little bit dark, a little bit more sinister, but not in that full-on fantasy vibe. This is done very much in folklore, so it's very, very interesting. But you're going to get 7 new ancestries, 5 new classes in here. There's a very large hex crawl map. There is also an adventure that comes at the end, and I always like it when you've got hex crawls and adventures. And there are, I reckon there's got to be several hundred random tables in here. And the random tables that are in here, you could really use in any setting, but I'll show you what I mean when we get to those. If you are going to consider picking this up, please do use my affiliate link. For full disclosure, Alessandro did actually send me this copy. He hasn't asked me to review it. He hasn't paid me anything for it. He was like, you know, I've got a new world. Are you interested? And I was like, I'm always interested. You know, I'll never say no to anything. I'm not necessarily always going to cover something, but if I read something, it's why my reviews are always relatively positive, because if I enjoy it, I want to talk about it and spread the word. And this is so interesting. It's because it's left field for me. You know, it's kind of out of my standard and most people's standard fantasy wheelhouse. But let me just show you and explain what I love about this as we get into the book. So we'll just start off with the front cover, which looks friendly enough. You know, it's got this, you know, it looks kind of like a sort of very flamboyant Renaissance cat, which is actually quite on par for this. As we get through the book, you're going to see an awful lot. It's all black and white art throughout, and it is brilliant. It's really well themed, the artwork that's been used throughout here. So it's written and designed by Alexandro Feta, I think. Again, I'm really sorry. Hopefully I won't apologise and just keep apologising for getting names wrong, but I think there's going to be a lot of it in here. All the art is by original artists, and there are some that's used public domain, so keep the AI out of these things, please. We're going to get to the contents page, which is hyperlinked, which is amazing. It's going to take you through the introduction and just explain to you what Mediterranean spaghetti fantasy is. And hopefully I can explain it. I've kind of pretty much covered it. Then going to get through character creation. So this is all player-facing stuff, so this is quite safe. Talking about original Shadowdark, which characters and classes and ancestries you can take. We've then got 5 new classes here: the Brigand, the Friar, the Harlequin, the Puppeteer, and the Questing Knight. Backgrounds, names, different, new and unique gods, deities, different languages, celestial signs, the birth sign you were born under, some new weapons. We're then going to get into magic, and we get these fey favors, which are, I'll explain it when we get there, but I've never seen anything like this across everything that I've reviewed. And it's, you can get a favor from a fey creature by doing something really nasty, and depending on how nasty it is that you do it, depends on the tier of the reward or spell you're going to be given. It's a really good idea. We then get the Puppeteer spell list, which is the caster out of these 5 classes in here. New spells for some of the original Shadowdark classes. We then get into gameplay, which is a section based on brawling, which is it's actually a really interesting way of doing non-lethal damage, which I think we're probably used to that in 5e, but I actually really like what he does here. We've then got a few tavern and games like Stars and Sexes, Soccer Punch, which is like the most famous game in here. Very much has that feel of sort of Blood Bowl because of the league tables and stuff that's in here, which is really good. New carousing rules and jousting rules in here. We then get into the history of the Duchy of Fanfalucca. We then get, which is the capital city in here. We then get Venefica, which is the city on water, which is going to feel very inspired by a very famous city. The land of Bengodi, which is it's a realm that the players can go to, and it's very sort of fey, toy realm inspired, which is really interesting. Then we're going to get into a load of random tables, so things like taverns of the duchy and rumours and nonsense, NPCs, and then we're going to get all the encounter tables after the hex crawl and the details of the hex crawl, say 50 pages of monsters, a load of treasure, and then we get the Catacombs of the Lost Saint, which is the adventure that's coming at the end, and I think it was 3rd to 4th level. I see. We'll show you when we get there, but it's all hyperlinked, and a lot of hyperlinking in this book as well, so it does make the PDF really interesting and really easy. So the book's going to open really on talking about what is a fantasy Mediterranean setting, and in essence, it's like, think of nice fantasy, think of the Mediterranean is the best way I can describe this, and everything is going to feel really nice. It should feel relatively safe ish, but all the players and everything is going to feel magical. But it does say here, evil moves even in broad daylight. Beware of what glitters. The air is as thick as sweet wine, incense and sweat. Community matters more than heroism, whether saints, witches, devils in disguise, or simply thieves, all share the same village. So you've got this, say, perception of niceness, but in reality, it's very dark. It is a sort of abstract version of Italy, but when we look at the hex crawl, I actually like the fact that Alexandra hasn't just done, the famous boot of Italy. He has actually just done it out to a completely different shape and pattern. We're then going to look at keywords to get into the spirit. So the next 3 pages are going to give us the sort of headlines and a little bit of information about how to actually run it in here. I'm not going to go through them all because there's quite a lot, but I'm just going to sort of point out a few of them. So we've got ancient classical cultures. So in a way, think about ancient Greece, ancient Italy, the Roman sort of times, but that's your sort of background to the world. Big talkers, there's a lot of this is about communication. Empty stomachs, empty purses. This is quite a funny one because, people are poor, people are hungry, but it's also a time of big feasts and food and wine. So you've basically got a huge class system in here, which really sort of shows once we get into the languages, because different people are going to speak. The upper classes and the lower classes have got two completely different languages, and they're going to struggle to communicate. The knights are all in their cloaks and armour have seen better days. It's a time of hexes and superstition. The folk legends are in here. I like this bit, cunning beats strength. It very much feels, there's little bits of this of Land of Eam, if you've ever played it or read it, because the idea is to outsmart and outthink your opponent before you draw your weapon to start a fight. Family is also everything, and the deities are actually around. They are physically part of things. There's lots of stuff about saints and devils and witchcrafts and pagans in here. Tragic comedy. There is, as I was going through the book, I was instantly drawn to the sort of, it does feel a bit like Dante's Divine Comedy. There's definitely an aspect of that. And I'm sure Dante was Italian, or Dante, depending on where you are. I've got in my head he was Italian, so that I think we do get that sort of feel. And you've got two different types of men. You've got the men of the sea and the men of the land, and they all have their own sort of stories to say. Ancestry. So once we get into character creation, there's a little here about ancestries, and realistically, it's a human-centric world, other than the other 7 ancestries we're going to talk about. But most people in the world are going to be human. It does kind of imply that you could be elves and stuff, but if that's the way you want to play the games the way you want to. But if you want to play it rules as written, you are going human, or duchy as they are called in here. We then get some variants of different classes that you can pay. So it does say fighter, priest, thief, wizard. We've got some from Elder Scrolls 1 and 2. Actually, there's one from Elder Scrolls 3 as well. And it just sort of like, for example, if you want to be a fighter, in this you're going to be called a swordsman, bandit, or a thug. If you're going to go down the thief, you're technically going to be burglar, robber, con artist. So it's just it's the same thing, same rules, but it's just going to sort of homebrew it to the specific world in here as well. Yeah, there was a Curse Scroll 3, so we've got the Sea Wolf, which is one of the Viking classes in here. We then get the 7 new ancestries, which is where my stress starts to kick in, because I don't even know where to start with this one. I've got a starter. I don't know. But anyway, these are good devils, and they're immune to fire damage, magical, or nature, which is cool. That is because fire damage seems to be one of the more common things that I think games masters like to have, because it does feel more scary than water damage and things like that. So that's going to be quite cool. You can just walk through it. We've got these Kemen here. So all harmful spells you target have disadvantage on casting checks. So they are the original inhabitants of the Borderlands. We've got Fawn, which should be quite familiar for people. I think 5th edition, they're called satyrs in there. And while taking a rest in a forest terrain, you don't need to consume rations to perform a rest. Got these Furkin, which are the cat folks. Take you right back to the front. You can speak with animals and exchange simple concepts with them. Marguto, so standing almost 8 foot tall. They're believed to be descendants of the giants in here, and they get to add half of the level to the gear slots. Ancient folk, which are human. So you will see there's 8 of them, but I think it's because ancient folk aren't a new ancestor. Pinocchio, Marinette. You've probably seen the cartoon or read the book. And once per day, you can spend a minute repairing yourself, and you can roll a number of d4 equal to half of your level to heal yourself. I like that. I just like the fact that this like wooden puppet thing is just like reslotting an arm back on. And then finally, we've got the Travan, which are the wandering folk. They came from the sea centuries ago, and they can use a luck token to force the games master into a reroll. There is also a hex rule in this that's kind of tucked away, which when you get a hex, if you as the player have the hex, the games master or one of your players can force you to give up your hex token and force a reroll. So it works like luck, but it's more negative. And this is what I'm saying about it's more human-centric in world, because you do roll your ancestry, and over 50% of the time you're going to end up with a human, and then we've got the other 7 ancestors down there. So we've got 5 new classes to look at. We've got the Brigand class, which is the outlaw roadside robber, and they're, D6, so they're sort of middle of the road in here. They've got this stand and deliver ability, which is going to help them use intimidation or threats to get what you want without doing anything else. Fortune infamy, 3 times a day they can roll a d4 and add the results to any check. They're really good at ambushing, and they are kings of the wild. You have advantage to rolls to move and hide in environments of your choice, and they, whether they want woods, plains, or sea. We're then going to get the Friar class, which is cool. I do like, I don't know why, because I'm not a religious person, but I am very much drawn to religious type characters whenever I'm role playing. And these are a wandering monk, wielding both the strength of their fists and divine powers. And they get probably one of the most powerful abilities I've seen in here, which is turn the other cheek. All unarmed attack do a d4 damage. They're always considered magical, and you have advantage to your damage rolls when attacking at close range. They're pretty much always going to be at close range, so they're going to have advantage on the rolls. It's only going to do a d4, but it's a magical d4, which is going to have big effects on certain things. And if you do manage to roll snake eyes, you're going to get that to a d6. So it's quite good. They get Martyr's Grace, so when you touch an ally, you may transfer harm from themselves yourself. So you're going to heal them a d6 damage or move 1 reflection, and then you're going to immediately take a d4 damage as well. So they can punch hard and they can heal. Well, they're going to take a little bit of damage themselves. They're also trained in theology, and they're going to get advantage on any rolls related to that. And miracle work at focus. So choose an ally you can see, make a wisdom DC 12 check. On success, you can subtract a d4 from all attacks against your target. Friars are great. You want to wander with a friar. Harlequin classes. So these are actors who wear mythical masks of traditional comedy. And again, they're a d6 class here. They know a couple of the ancient languages. They have advantage on checks to pretend to be someone else when they're lying and cheating. Each time after you take a rest, you can choose a new mask to impersonate an iconic character of comedy as well. So we've got 5 of these classes here, and once per day, one will give a luck token, and each time you use a luck token, you're going to heal yourself. Another one will allow us to do crits on a 19 or 20. We've got 1. Notice how I'm not reading out the names. If the target of your attack has already been hit by an attack this round, you can do an extra d4 damage. You can activate a spell scroll using charisma as your spellcasting stat. Or finally, once per day, you may turn invisible for 3 rounds. That's really cool because I like these ones. It's very much that old school magical feel when we're playing wizards in sort of 2nd edition AD&D or 3.5. where you had to actually pick your spells going into the next day. So you're picking your mask is going to it's going to be a little bit of a choice of what you do. The puppeteers they're effectively the spellcasters here. They're going to be using intelligence to cast their spells, but they get a few other additional things. They get advantage on checks for repairing and disassembling and repurposing their puppets. They automatically know the animate puppet's spell, and it doesn't affect their number of spells per day. And they are soulbound, so once per day, negate all damage that the puppet under your control would suffer from attack. So as you can see, they're not technically. I kind of class these as like a half caster because they are coming in with a d6 hit points, and they're only going to ever get to a maximum of 3 per tier per day. We will look at their spells once we get to it. Then finally we get the Questing Knight, because if you remember back to the contents, there was a bit on jousting in here. So this is your full D8 chivalric knight that's going to go around on a horse 3 times a day. A monster within close range has disadvantages, attacks against you. You can fight on a mounted war horse, and you're not going to have a lot of difficulty to fight things because obviously there's no real rules for mounted combat in Shadowdark, straight Shadowdark. But your mount has an additional levels equal to half your level, so your mount is going to get better and stronger with you. And then finally, your courtly manners is you're going to have advantage on all checks related to interacting with nobility. We get some boons and tenants in here, some specific backgrounds, including things like actor and petty fog, which is a petty lawyer quibbling over trivial matters. Some names specific, which always helps, both male and female, surnames and nicknames. Then we got the next section is talking about deities. So the main deities that humans, the Duchy are going to follow in here are saints. There are other people. They're going to summon some of the older gods, which are the Roman pantheon. Yes, you heard that right. It's very much Roman. which I'll show you. But you'll see this once we get into the history of here. And it makes perfect sense, if you're going to go with the Mediterranean, Latin, Italian type feel, you would be pulling on some sort of Roman mythology, which is cool. And then finally, we've got a couple of chaotic evil lords from Hal to tempt people if they want to be more of the chaotic gods. But here we go, the lawful gods in here. So they are the Cantil of the Saints. And we've got a variety of different saints that people are going to follow in here. And let's just pick on one. So is it Pastella? I should be able to read that one. Which is the patron of farming, breakfast, lunches and dinners. Her symbol of the ladle and fork with which she feeds for the hungry. So we've got, say, variety of saints. So these tend to be your lawful. We're then going to get into the neutral ones, which are, see, Fortuna, Remo the God King, Plutone, Silvano, which, say, they very much feel like ancient Roman gods. They've got their own sort of tenets and things, and how they interact with the duchy. And then finally, we've got Gog and Magog, which they're the twin gods from the 9 realms of Hal. And yeah, they are here to tempt people with deceit, hatred, and manipulation. All the classes get titles depending on whether you're going to be lawful, neutral, and chaotic, which basically means the players can actually play what they want. Because occasionally I'll pick up a book and there'll be no chaotic, or there'll be no lawful for certain classes and stuff. And, so I'm now starting to point that out, that it does include. This is what I'm saying about the languages. We've got common languages throughout spoken, like the Vulgata here, spoken by most humanoids. And then we're going to get into the rare languages, it's like dead Old Roman, which is, it's Latin, isn't it? Scholars and dead language. We've then got things like devil and specific languages, the angel languages. So you're starting to get a feel for this world that devils, demons, saints all exist on this as well. So I've kind of sold it in a way that it's, it's quite a nice fantasy with that dark undertones. But as we start, say, we get into the hex crawls and we start looking at the specific towns and locations, you are going to kind of see this is not the nice place that I think Alex, he doesn't, it's not that he doesn't want it to be that, but it's very folky, not fantasy is I think probably the best way to look at it. I like this section for someone that is not a fan of languages, but it just gives you an idea of how the languages sound, which is quite cool. Doesn't need to be in here, but it's just nice. Anything extra is always good. Celestial signs. This is going to give the player characters, in essence, a +2 bonus to a specific stat, which I think now, when you think about it, +2 to a stat basically is a talent roll. So that means your first level characters are kind of coming in at 3rd. They're not, because they're still 1st, but they are going to end up with an extra +2 to a stat. It's random, so it might not necessarily be overly important, but to be honest, +1 to a dice roll, whether you wanted it or not, is always going to come up and always going to be helpful. But all the players are going to be doing, each of them are going to roll a d6 in here, and it's going to give them a +2 to that stat. So if they get the Ram of Embers, for example, so they got a flaming ram, which is their symbol, it's got some characteristics, and more important, the prophecy. And what the prophecy does, if the player can build that into a session, so your fire will blaze brightest when you protect the weak. Each time you stand as their shield, your spirit grows stronger. The games master is going to reward you with a luck token. This will also come on, remember, celestial signs in a bit, which I'll play back in here. But most importantly, it's the way the character is going to get more luck tokens and +2 to a stat. Got some new weapons here. When my favourite one is the flail because of this D. So I don't think I've seen D before, but this weapon does 4, slight spelling error there, does ×4 damage on a critical hit and then it's destroyed. Love it. I actually love the fact you can just do this wonderful crit, do an absolute ton. You're going to be doing 4d8 damage, which is a lot. Well, if you roll a 1, it's only 4, but that's a lot. If you're rolling like 6, 7 or 8 in there, and then you haven't got a weapon for the rest of the combat, or unless you've got a backup weapon. Really, really cool idea. Like it. We've got some new armor up here as well. And then finally, we're going to get into the magic section. Fey favors. This is what I said in the contents. So here we go. You can get a spell, a gifted spell here. And depending on what you do, whether it's a minor errand, a twist of fate, or tilt the world, which could make a major symbolic or supernatural shift occur, you can get a bonus spell from the Fae. And it will give you examples here from tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. It does say a D4 here. There are 6 of them, so I'm guessing Alexander at some stage has added a couple of extra in here. But let's just look at this the tier 4 here. So find the true name of a monster and speak it in a sacred place. It's not going to be easy to get these things off because, well, why should it be? You know, you are going to be rewarded with a favour. Oh, wow. Let's look at this one. This tier 5 here. Steal a star's reflection from a frozen lake and hide it in someone's dream. I've got a whole load of questions on how you're going to do that as a games master and for the player to achieve it. But it's going to give them something cool to look at. We then get the puppeteers, and this is what I said about they feel like a half caster because they don't actually get a huge amount of spell choices either. Because a lot of Shadowdark classes, especially the first 3 tiers, there tends to be about 10. Then it drops to 8 in here, and we've got 5, 4, 4, 4, and 4 respectively across the 5 tiers. But some of these spells are cool, which I'll specifically go on, but they are all hyperlinked as well. So if you want to sort of click on, you can, it'll just jump you through. We've got some new spells as well for the priest, wizard, and witches, which is always good. So more choice is always, I'm always a happy man. An animate puppet is your main puppeteer spell in here. So you touch a wooden object the size of a dog and it transforms into a puppet. It's then going to give you the puppet stats in here. And of your choice of half your level. So the DC to cast it is basically going to be 11 or 10 plus the puppet's level. The creature acts on your turn. You may use it as an action to command it, which it obeys. Otherwise, it doesn't act. So yeah, it's going to have to be told what it does every round. But that is your level 1 first spell set. That doesn't also come against the number of spells that you know, so you can just go on with that as well. We've got here Fire Eater here for the puppets. You extinguish all fire of your choice within range by breathing them in. You then may exhale the flame back out at the creature, doing 2d6 damage. If any extinguished source was larger than a bonfire, the target may suffer 4d6 damage. So it's brilliant. It's a great spell. Suck in that fire, blow it back out, and go and do some additional damage to people as well. I do like nice, interesting spells when they're coming in as well. Spark of Life, which is a nice tier 4 puppeteer spell here. Again, instant, spirit, and near. You temporarily instill life into a near matter. An object no larger than the horse that you can see within the spell's range moves up to a maximum distance of near and strikes the target at full mass, dealing 3d6 damage. Point at some dirt, twigs, logs, rocks, whatever it may be, and just sort of fireball it out and go and whack someone doing 3d6 damage. Great little spell. There's always going to be something around. Want to be an absolute git? Carry coins in your pocket. Put a coin on the floor. Flick coins at people. I think that would work. I'd allow that to work. The next section coming up is gameplay. And this is the abstract new way of doing... And it's going to open up with brawling, which is the new way of doing non-lethal damage. So we've got here, every character is going to have brawn points, which is BP. So it's exactly the same as the Constitution. So if you've got a con of 10, you've got 10 BP. And it just basically means if someone's punching you to do an unarmed attack, things like that, unless you're the monk, obviously, then sucker punch here will do a d4 damage, but that's not going to come off your main hit points. It's just going to come off your BP points. And there's a variety of different things for improvised weapons, grappling, hitting people and swinging from chandeliers and stuff to have a good old fashioned Western type brawl fight, which is a bar fight, which is quite cool. We then get different tavern games, which I'm not going to focus on too much with. So I'm going to look at the Iron Cauldron, for example. So this is where a cauldron's hung from the ceiling. You can run through, headbutt it, and try not to get the soup on you. More soup, the more you're going to lose. A card game in here as well, which is always cool. This feasting, so you can feast and you can eat up to 3 lots of rations in one go, which means you can then basically go longer without needing to eat. This is the section on hex tokens that I was talking about and the celestial influence. Celestial influence is linked back to the celestial signs that we looked at that each of the characters is going to have when you get character creation from the 1 to 6 in here. But the games master at the start of the session is going to roll a d8. If it's a 1, all the player characters are going to pick a hex which is that negative luck token. On an 8, all the players are going to get 5 XP if they manage to pull off their prophecy during the day. From the 2 to 7, if that happens to be your star sign, you're just going to instantly get a luck point. That's quite cool, a little bit of bonus stuff to go on in there. Soccer Punch, so it very much feels like a mix of football, Blood Bowl, that sort of thing. Not as brutal as Blood Bowl, you haven't got the big armor, but like it, you've got, juniors, seniors, and professionals in the world as well. And they've got different prize tables, team generators, the pitch and stuff. I don't know whether players would actually play in it, whether you'd run a tournament or not. I don't know. Jousting, if you've got one of the knights, you're probably going to have some jousts, or at least have people turn up to watch it. So I always like jousting rules. It's always it's like an interesting thing. Remember, most jousts aren't to the death. And just like the Soccer Punch, we've got a load of random tables for like opponent quirks, opponents' demeanours and things like that. New carousing rules. I always like it when a creator puts in specific carousing rules to them. So I'm just going to pick on, like, say, 15 here. At dawn, you wake up groggy and sore. The ragged old rake you took for a drunken fraud was in fact a true baroness or baron, and they paid for everything. You're going to gain 5 XP and get a noble ally, and all your costs have been refounded. That needs correcting. Okay, so I think pretty much the rest of the book now is hex crawl map, details of the world. So this would be where, players realistically should disappear. Only Games Master from here on in. You've been warned. We're 96 pages into the books. We've still got over 200 to go. But good news is this is mostly lore and world building. So the history of the world, as you'd imagine, being very much Italian based, is sort of 500 years ago. A person called Remo was raised by wolves. Stop me when this story sounds familiar. He then built a city, united all the tribes and clans and everything, and he was revered. The problem is, everything greed, the city then got greed and corruption took over. One of the slaves basically then managed to sort of get ordained by gods and became the first saints, led to rebellion, and Rome, as it was, got destroyed. Several of the cities sort of grew up and sort of built, and the world itself now is in the kind of balance. You've got all the lords and the ladies and those sort of people still trying to look down on the sort of the villages and everything in here, but you've also got this other realm where the sort of toy people come from. And obviously, we now have got deals, devils, saints and stuff on the world. But I like the fact it's, it's Italian based. So why not build it off, Italian lore and, Roman history. So the main city itself, which is weird because it's the smaller of the two cities we're going to talk out, which is Fanfalucca, I think. Lucia, probably. But I'm not going to go on full details of the cities. But what I like in here is things like this. So the city is sort of broken down into different districts, and it's going to explain little bits about the districts. So we've got here, so in the Campo Party, which is the slums, we've got the main prison. And then it's going to talk about a guy that is locked up, that has been usurped by his brother from the rival gang. And let's go, okay, so then you can click on this, and this will take you to something else in the book, which will then allow you to look at another gang. And you're going, okay, there's an adventure there. If the players ever get into this slum section here, it's a good chance they're going to talk to this prisoner, and the prisoner might convince them. If they go to the low area, I'm not even going to attempt this. We've got 2 pubs, inns, and I love the fact they're both rivals, and they've fallen out over how many levels that they're going to put into their signature lasagna. That's it. It's just, I tell you, I like basic information about towns and cities, and then when a creator just puts in 3 or 4 different little lines in there to go, there's something in it, they can just turn up to the one inn, and there's just going to be, they're going to be made aware of the rivalry because you can play on that, and it's really, really, really interesting and really well written. And then we get Venice, effectively, which is Benfica, I think that's pronounced, with City on Water. This is a large city. So the first city was 80,000 people. This has got 110,000 people. There's a massive mount as in the middle of the city, which is really, where the whole city, this is because of the waterways and stuff. It's rich in trade, barter and goods. And likewise, it's got, you know, different districts it's going to talk about. And then we've got like this sinking clock where like the face is just above the water and it's still still managed to work in there. And then when we get into the slums area, we've got this cursed gondola, which they might not want to get on. If the players do, let them get on. But he's going to then take them off to Hal. He's not going to take them anywhere nice. It's just brilliant. Absolutely, just say you're talking about this place, and then just go, here's a little bit of story ideas as well. The land of Ben Godi, which is the land beyond the Great Veil of Illusions, which say Toy Town. So this is another realm. So it very much feels like another realm. It's not mapped. It does talk about how it's not mapped in here as well. And we've got some random tables in here. But when I was reading through this, and I don't know whether this is the way it's intended, but I instantly thought of the Roger Rabbit movie. Because it just very much feels like you're going to go into this as like the Duchy, the human. You're going to turn into this other realm. And it's just going to be full of like living toys and marionettes and stuff. And we've got all these tables here about the boons and things you can get from the marionettes. And their different names. What mood are they in? What sort of features and desires are they going to have? What taboos are going to define their nature? And as we start getting into this section of the book, we are just going to see an absolute ton of random tables. So we've got some taverns here for the duchies, the establishment, the sign, the attribute that's assigned for it. What unique trait in here is a D20 table here for the unique traits. What sort of food have they got on, the drink they've got on, a load of rumours and nonsense, which is going to allow you to, so here, followers of Remo are occupying all the ancient ruins, so which we'll see that on the hex crawl map, but again, it's just going to give the players, or, as Games Master, a hook to throw at the players to go. And one of my favourite areas of the hex crawl map is here, which is 809, which is an old amphitheatre. It's one of the areas I'm going to talk about. But when we get into looking at the NPCs, these tables are brilliant. So we've got things like actors. We've got actors, charlatans, rogues, cooks, innkeepers, farmers, vineyards, highwaymen. I'll just pause on the highwayman here. So this is a load of random tables. So I reckon there's several hundred random tables in this book, which you can use this for anything. So if you ever wanted to create an NPC highwayman, you've got this. It's where's their base? Give you an idea where their base is. What noble cause do they pretend to serve? What kind of bandit are they? Who leads them? Who secretly finances them or wants them dead? What do they love to steal? So it's their favourite thing they like to grab. What trouble follows them? They wanted in all cities. Is there a traitor amongst them? And what do they believe in? Any sort of superstitions? It's going to just add so much more theme to a random highwayman encounter if you ever put it in. But we've got the same things for merchants in here, musicians, bards, nobles and social climbers, priests and hermits, sailors, fishermen, sellswords and bravos, scribes, I'm still going, townfolk, hedge witches, wizards. And that's it. I'll say that's it. There's those pages there from a Games Master, it's worth it for the book alone, just to get those to roll the random tables and stuff. So this is where I get into my first proper grumble in here. And let's just look at this hex crawl map here. And as you can see, they start at 11 and then they'll go through to 40, whatever it may be. I think it's about 43, 44. But if I said to you, go and find number 11 on the map, you'd be like, okay. Here it is, in the middle. Okay, right, now find me number 12. Okay. See, I randomly did pick. Number 12's here. I would just put them in, go, put 11, 12, put them down and go across the map or across the top, so it's very quick and easy for a Games Master. I don't know why it's done this well. I don't think I've ever seen them randomly dotted around, because these locations aren't even in alphabetical order either, so I generally don't know. But 17 on the map here, that is the ruins of Rima, which is obviously the old ancient Rome with the stuff with all the pagan cultists that are in here. I want to find my amphitheatre. Here's the amphitheatre that I really like the idea of this. So by day, a marble amphitheatre stands silent and crumbling, a grand relic of forgotten age. But when night falls, it transforms into a wild refuge for wild satyrs and their madcap parties under the moonlight. The satyrs invite brave adventurers to join their revels, either by staging a lively, humorous performance or entering a chaotic gladiator contest. Those who win earn the coveted satyr's crown, which is one of the really rare magic items at the back of the book. But it's just like, it's completely in the day. Nothing's going on, nothing to see here. Move along. At night, gladiator arenas or a play, depending on what you might get. And there's a variety of other stuff. I don't really want to spoil it, but there's one of them where there is a king that's got a skin on the wall. And if you correctly identify what that skin's from, you can marry his beautiful daughter. If you get it wrong, you're going to be fed to something. And there's a load of guards and you're going to have to fight your way off. And then we've got this Colossus here at 45. So is that 49? It's 49, not 42. So 45, we'll just pick on this. So all that remains of the two enormous statues, stone feet sandals, and there's a plaque on there. So I am the tyrant Maximus of Rima. Behold my conquest mortal. Only the sea could hold me. And any players that stay there, they're going to gain some XP for the first time they ever stay there. So not everything's bad. There's some good stuff and nice things in here. Now, remember we're talking about random tables? We've got a load more coming up. So we've got a random table for the Ben Goddy encounters, the rustic countryside, the blooming city itself, rolling hills, rugged mountains, swamps, marvels, seas, Benfica, encountered forests. So again, it's just absolute shed load of stuff. Some of the will be hyperlinks, so some of the creatures are hyperlinked in here, which will take you to the monster pages we're going to look at in a second. And the rest of it are just creatures that you will find in the Shadowdark core rulebook. Monster sections. We've got 50 pages now of monsters, and there's a load of these things I don't think I've ever seen or heard from, so I'm guessing they are, again, based on Italian folklore, like these Blemmies, I think. These are brutal seafaring headless humanoids, but their faces are in their chest. Like this. Great. Absolutely weird. Get, standard stuff that you would have seen, like charlatans and stuff like that. Where's that weird thing? Obviously, we've got devils in here. Here we go. The Impulsor, a shape-shifting human born from the union of a hag and mortal men. Seductive and deceptive, it hunts lone travellers in animal or human form. So, yeah, you're going to get seduced by this thing. It's not going to look like that thing, but it's going to, when you wake up in the morning, if it doesn't try and rip your face off. We've got some of these cool, unique little fairy type people here, and there's a lot of fairies. What is it? Is it 6 pages of fairies? Yeah, 6 pages, that's what it was. So different types for different levels, which are cool. We've got golems as well. I say grotto beast. This is a mimic on steroids. It's basically a cave that people are going to go into, and then it's going to try and eat them. So it's a big, giant mimic type things. A lot of hags, as you'd expect from Italian folklore. A neutrine, so a squat furry creature with rodent fangs, grasping hands, and cunning eyes, dwelling in swamps. There's just a lot in here. So these are the puppets that the puppeteer can actually summon as well. So we've got different level ones as well. So as they do level up, they are going to be able to sort of pull on some slightly more interesting things as well. So we've even got a puppet dragon that they can get once they get up to level 5. Strigger, sounds familiar if you're a Witcher fan. And then we get this, the Buttery Man, a cracking coachman in a stiffly black livery with a face smooth and gleaming like soft butter. But he's level 15 and it's going to do, I'm not going to cover any more because I don't like covering overly the big creatures, but we're finally going to get werewolves in here as well. Now getting into treasure tables. So this is all the magical items in here. We have got a deck of many things type thing. So I normally stop and point out a magical item, normally a weapon, but this one I want to look at the Peddler's Tarot. So this is a 22 card deck, which you're going to do these physically. If you've ever played the deck of many things in Dungeons and Dragons, you really need to do it physically and have a physical deck of cards in here. And this is going to give you that feeling. So you're going to play these tarot cards, get the players to draw out, and then some good things are going to happen to them, or nasty things. And it seems to be a nice mix of 50-50 of what may and may not happen. And as you can see here, we've got death, but it's not death. It's survive death. You may cheat death once per day. If your character would die from any effect, you are instead safe with 1 hit point, but something important is lost forever. An item, an ally's trust, or part of yourself. It's going to be part of yourself, isn't it? So yeah, we've got a lot of magical items in here. Then we got all these saints' relics, which the main adventure that's included in here is about going and finding one of the saints' relics in here. And also included in the saints' relics is the satyr's crown from the amphitheatre that we looked at earlier. And then the book is going to close. Yeah, it was 3rd, 4th level. I said that's what I had down in here. So we've got an adventure in here. All the maps, I probably should have said this, are included on Drive4RPG as well. I'm not going to cover the adventure, but it's a 2-level adventure. There's round about 60 different rooms across the 2 levels. Both of them have got their own rumours and encounters, and as you imagine, a lot of it is dark, but in essence, they're sent to go and find a saint's relic, and they are up against it because there are other factions that are going in there. We've got this one gang that's going in there to go and get it. We've also got the cult, which is the Sons of Remo, which may or may not be in and around the ruins of Remo. We've got the Dead Saints in there trying to get them as well. So yeah, it's quite good. I say all the maps and stuff are included. So I'm just going to sort of scroll through to the end and give you an idea. Here's the map of the 2 levels. So say it's a pretty big double level place. We've then got some appendixes for novels, poetries, music, and things to go and watch. And then finally, we got the pronunciation guide as well, which if I'd spent a bit more time in, it's not going to help me. Might help you read things better for the Italian sort of pronunciation, but I struggle enough in English, to be honest. And then we've got a loot table for things that you find on your unconscious opponent when you've beaten them up with the new rules. So that's it. That is Fandonia, which I think you can tell I really like it. So it's got some really good and interesting things. And I think initially I was like Mediterranean fantasy. I feel maybe a little bit put off because it's not true fantasy. But as soon as you get into it and you then start realizing that it's a lot more, it does have that feel of, Divine Comedy, that it's quite a sinister world in there. But the amount of Games Master's tools, I now when I'm looking at books, I kind of think I want more tools. I want more random tables, make my NPCs better and more interesting. And I think, we've got, I think it was 15 different types of NPCs with all those interesting tables in there. The monsters are great. 50 pages of more monsters. Really interesting magic items in there. We've also got, the tarot cards. You've got an adventure. Okay, it's 3rd to 4th level. The players are going to level up quite quick because, say, at 1st level, when you look at some of the 1st level monsters in there, and the player characters, they are in essence, I think, technically 3rd level. Not quite 3rd level hit points, but they are going to be 3rd level. So actually, we could call them possibly 2nd level because they're going to have that little bit of extra oomph on them. That they may level up a little bit quicker, but yeah, once you get to that adventure, it's really going to sort of take off because there's a lot in that adventure. Because when I was going through it, what I really like with some of these adventures is when they actually include lots of puzzles and secret doors and stuff, and so there's lots in there. But once you start reading through the hex crawls, I only gave you a few examples because I don't like to spoil too much in here, and we look at the background and the history of the the 2 towns that are in there, and then that toy town that goes on in the sort of toy world. I can't remember what it's called now, and he talked about it 10 minutes ago. But it's just brilliant, and I like the fact it does talk about it not being mapped. There is no hex crawl map because no cartographer has ever managed to actually map it out, which is either sinister in itself, or he hasn't either managed to get around it all, or he's always been killed. I don't know. Generally don't know. New classes, I really like that monk class. Oh, that magical punching is quite tasty, and his ability to heal from other people. Okay, he's going to take a little bit of hit points back as well. And the puppeteer does look like a very strong caster. You're only going to get to know 3 of the spells per tier, but they all look really good and really interesting. And if that's not enough, go and do something for a fae, and then the fae's going to give you some magic as well. All the while wielding a flail, hoping you do a crit to do that ×4 damage. Really good, interesting world. So if you are going to pick this up, please do consider using my affiliate link, because any money generated on that I'll put back into the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.